what I'm talking about. I spent time long in every single woman. She had that nerve. She kicked me out. In the middle of winter, baby. Yeah. It ain't no gonna prove me down there. Everything gonna be all right. Yeah, everything gonna be all right. See, this woman, she's living on it, poor man pain. I bought a brand new fur coat.
Bryan Lee, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. We can hear you loud and clear, man. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I have on the line with me all the way from Louisiana, Mr. Bryan Lee. How's it going tonight, Brian?
Well, it's just kind of easy. I almost forgot about it. I had a bad night's sleeping last night, and kind of just today was one of those kind of days where I kept falling asleep.
Oh, no.
And I almost forgot about the interview, which would have been awful.
I know, because
God, I didn't.
Your fans out there are listening, ready to hear what you got to say.
Yes, I know.
I'm glad, I'm glad you called. Thank you so much. Well, let's see. I hope that you take care of yourself so that, the folks out there can hear you play and sing again like I know I always do whenever I get a chance to go to New Orleans. If I see Bryan Lee is playing somewhere, I'm going.
That's nice. I appreciate that.
It's true. So let's talk a little bit of your upbringing. You grew up in Wisconsin. Is that where you did?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The northeast part of the state,
mm-hmm.
right on Lake Michigan, about a little town called Two Rivers, which was 30 miles southeast of Green Bay. And if you keep following me down the lake, you hit Milwaukee, and then you hit Chicago. So I was about maybe 150 miles from Chicago.
And when did you venture off to go into the Windy City?
Well, actually, I got to think now. It was at the old, what was that place called? It's where the roof fell in.
It was a blues club?
A medical doctor ran it. I can't think of the name of it right now. Damn it.
But you went there.
But anyway, we were on our way to Ann Arbor,
mm-hmm.
and my harmonica player had been over there the night before. He told me, "Man, you got to call this guy, man. We can get a gig there, and we can play in Chicago." And I said, "Well, yeah." I mean, he said, "Well, we're driving to Ann Arbor. We got to go through Chicago to get there. You got to call him up." So I called him up, and this lady answers the phone, and it's the doctor's office. And I'm like, this is a little weird. So the guy gets on the phone, and he goes, "Yeah, man, I'm a doctor, blah, 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 blah. But I run this club, so you guys want to play there tomorrow night? Your harp player was talking about you guys are driving to Ann Arbor." So he said, you want to play there tomorrow night? And I said, yeah, we can. I mean, it'll work out okay.
Mm-hmm.
He said, great. Kingston Mine.
Oh, the Kingston Mine. Yeah, it's still going strong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I said, well, what kind of money, Doc? What kind of money can we make? He goes, guys have you got? I said, well, I got 5 guys. He goes, well, let me see here. I can pay you $30. And I said, $30 a man? He goes, no, $30.
Oh, gee.
So I said, I'm going to have to call you back. So I pitched it to my guys, and they were all like, well, it gives us a chance to play in Chicago, and, well, we're just driving to Ann Arbor anyway, so what's the difference? We make an extra we make money, extra $30 to throw in the gas tank. So
wow.
That was like my first introduction to Chicago.
Oh, wow.
In Chicago, yeah.
Wow. We're talking with Bryan Lee from his home in Louisiana. And so you actually lived in Chicago for a while, didn't you?
Not really. I mean, I had some friends that I stayed with for about a month, but it was just too hectic. So I set myself up in Milwaukee because it just wasn't as hectic.
Uh-huh.
Now you watch the news and you see all the killings all the time and everything like that. They don't have a handle on it. You got to be really careful. I mean, you go to Legends. I mean, it's not a problem. They got great security and everything like that, but still, it's they got a problem there that they've got to get a handle on, because they're going to lose. They're going to lose the people that come there to hear the blues.
Right.
Because it just happens that people get robbed and people get shot, and it's really unfortunate.
Well, being a blind person, you almost always have somebody with you, right?
Well,
you're not going to tell me these stories like Snooks Eaglin used to tell me he used to drive a car.
Snooks Eaglin is full of it. He didn't drive. I mean, his wife drove, his guys and his man drove. And that's the same thing with me. I mean, I was married at first, and then I wasn't married, so I lived by myself in Milwaukee for, about 13 years before I moved down to New Orleans. So at that time I was by myself, but I was a tough guy in those days. I was a tough guy with a cane. I knew where I had to go, and I took care of it. But I wouldn't have taken Chicago on by myself.
Yeah, it's a tough place.
A little bit rough,
No doubt. In case you just joined us, folks, we're talking with Bryan Lee. He's got a new CD out, and we're going to be talking about that in a minute. But it's very nice for him to call in and talk to us about himself and his life and his career. There is. You've been in New Orleans for a long time now, though, right?
Yeah, I left. Let's see, January 2nd of 1982. And I got there on the 4th. And interestingly enough, we got there about 8 o'clock at night. And 2 hours later, we set up and played a gig.
Wow.
At a place called the Blue Saloon. And that was the beginning.
Wow. Well, Brian, I want to talk to you about the old Absinthe House. My best story about that is that one night I was down Bourbon Street, and it was when I first had come to town, and I'd never knew really where to go. So I was walking around Bourbon Street, and I went by this place, and I heard this music coming out of there. And it was you, and I said, I got to go in here. I heard you, but not only was it you, but you had the Tower of Power horns sitting in with you that night, you know. That was a long time ago, brother.
We were very, very fortunate in that when a lot of the big name groups would come into town and, you know, they would end up their shows by midnight. They wanted somewhere to go. They would always come by us.
Mm.
And that really means a lot to me. Same with B.B. King's band. He would come into town at the Fairmont Hotel and play the Blue Room for like 3 weeks. And, you know, those guys just would be down there every night with us, sitting in and everything. And I think one of the most exciting things for me was Hank Ballard. Was at the Blue Room for like about 6 weeks. And his band started coming down, and we went to see him on our night off, and it was such a great show. And I got to meet him, and it meant so much to me because he's the guy that invented the twist, and he had so many good records. And he came down to our club, man, and he sat in with the band, and I got a chance to sit out in the audience and observe it. And I thought to myself, just think, Hank Ballard's singing with my band.
Right.
And he loved it. He just loved it. You know?
And the Midnighters were no slouch themselves, you know.
No, they were not. No.
Wow.
And he carried this singer, female singer with him too, that just you know, threw a little extra kind of thing into it. You know, they called her Ani, the girl from the big city, and they would bring her on after they did their show. They would bring her on for about the last 20 minutes, and she would just tear it up. She was this white girl that could sing like Aretha Franklin. I mean, it was amazing. So she came down a couple of times and sat in with us too, and man, it was great. Wow. And the guitar player sat in, and the saxophone player sat in, and I think to me, of a lot of people that I love, Hank Ballard, that was quite a thrill. Same with the Johnny Otis show. Those guys came down. Johnny didn't, but his son Shuggy came down, and his son Nicky, who plays drums, came down, and you know, the singers. It was really, I always dug the Johnny Otis show. All those great tunes,
right,
from the past. You know,
it was a whole review. It was like one of those old time review shows, you know. And his son is still around. He's come back, you know. Shuggy's come back.
Yeah.
So, listen, I want to ask you, now that I know who some of your inspirations are, and I can tell from, like, when I look at your albums, the ones that you don't write are people that you might care a lot about. But what was the story on that place, the old Absinthe House? What was the story there? Because I know about the history of absinthe as a liquor, but, well, you know, it was just a club that they just had good music in there.
Yeah, well, it started off. It was the oldest continuous running bar in the country. They opened their doors in 1806, and they ran continuously. They never shut down. So when we were in there, it had been running for a long time. And I mean, it had some problems. It had some problems with the roof, and you know, it needed to have some work on it. But somehow, man, they just kept it open. And there was a theater group that had been in there for years, and they just kind of one day, at the time, one of the guys that was one of the owners just decided that the theater group was great, and having that show every night was great, but it was monotonous, and I want some live music. And a gentleman by the name of Luther Kent got in there with his band Trick Bag, and that kind of started it.
Okay. So you would alternate shows with him, like, during the night?
No, Luther got his own club down the street about a block, and so once he got his own club, then we got the gig full time. You know, we worked at a few other clubs as well as the Absinthe Bar on Bourbon Street. We worked at 544 Club. We worked the Opera House, but the cool place was the Absinthe Bar.
It certainly was.
And when we finally got in there full time, I mean, it was like, it doesn't get any better than this. It was great.
It was. You could just walk down the street. The thing was, you could hear the music right from the street, so you knew that if you wanted to go in, you knew what you were getting, which is really good. And it was top quality music compared to some of those jive bands that were on Bourbon Street, that catered to tourists.
Yeah, a lot of them they didn't rehearse like we did. We were serious.
Well,
and we every Wednesday afternoon we rehearsed. And most of the guys, they just never rehearsed.
Right. Well, hey, listen, I want to tell you about something. I have a friend of mine here in town, great musician. Her name is Sally Towns. And she said for me to say hello to you. Yes, she said you would know her because she used to play down at the Seaport.
I love that gal.
All right.
Oh, man, I had a thing for Sally like you wouldn't believe.
Oh.
She was such a sweetheart. And she's a great musician. I mean, she was a one-man band thing, but put that woman in a band. She's a great keyboard player. And a pretty good singer too. And I mean, I know she left New Orleans. I know she went to Florida for a while, and I lost track of her. So she's
in Albuquerque, New Mexico now. So we're lucky here because we get to see her play a few times around town. Plays, and we're just lucky to have someone like that here. But I just have.
She plays the one-man band?
Yeah, well, she usually has a guitar player with her, Greg Duffy, but she can do it. I mean, she's got the keyboards and everything to do it. Yeah. So we love Sally Towns here. We're lucky to have her here in Albuquerque.
She's a good lady.
We're talking to Mr. Bryan Lee from Irrelevant Records, his new CD, and I wanted to talk to him for a long time on the radio anyway, but it was a great occasion when I heard from one of his media people, Frank Rozak, and he said if I would like to do an interview with him, to contact him, and so it worked out. So we're going to end it pretty soon, but before we go, I want to hear about the new CD. Tell me a little bit about it, because it's a little different, than what you've been doing, but it's still the blues.
It is different than the typical Bryan Lee CD. I'll tell you what, I'm a Christian person, and I always wanted to give back to the good Lord for the talent and all the blessings that He's given me in my life. And I started this album in 2011 over in Norway. And the last two cuts on the CD were the two cuts that we recorded in Norway. And the Adam Douglas group, which was the group that recorded with me, we wanted to do this album, but we just never could get a time where they weren't busy. They're busy. I'm not busy, but they're busy. So, too bad, or vice versa. They're not busy. I'm busy. So it went on till 217. And 217, it was like I'd had some serious health problems. And I thought, well, I'm still here, but what happens if I don't make it? I'll never finish that project. I got to finish that project. So I happened to be hanging out in Sarasota, Florida, and some friends of mine called the Jimmies were down for a deal through Florida. And I sat in with them, and we just had a wonderful time. And they had a 3-piece horn section. They were like a 7-piece band. And their sound man, Steve Hamilton, said to me, hey, man, I'd love to record you. I said, record me? He said, yes, I've got a very good studio up in Milwaukee. He said, it's called the Making Sausage Music Studio. And I kind of laughed, He said, yeah, well, he said, Milwaukee and sausage are,
right.
one of the same. He said, sausage and beer, And I said, yeah, okay, well. He said, really, seriously, I would like to record you. So I thought about who would I use. I wanted to use my bass player, but I really, I wanted to use Jimmy Bagley on the keys, and I had the opportunity to use Matt Lieben to play drums, and his dad, Jim Lieben, is very great harmonica player and singer. He had a band called Short Stuff. And when I first met Matt, I think he was about 8 years old, and I got a kick out of how he was so into the music. And, here he is now. He's in his 40s, and he's like just such a great drummer. So I kind of, with Steve, we worked through this, and we used my bass player and my guitar player on some cuts. Matt did all the drumming. We used another bass player by the name of David Kasich that I used to work with years ago, because my bass player Jack couldn't make it back for the second segment of it. So, but it was okay because David was a good player, and we just kind of, we got it together. And then when we were mixing on Sanctuary, the title tune, my guitar player had done some slide, and it just needed to be more than what he did. And Steve said, I think Greg Koch is in town. And Greg is this amazing guitar player that goes out and puts on clinics all over the world. And he called him up, and sure enough, he was home. So he came over with his dobro and sat down and played slide and really added a lot to the song. And then I think the biggest thing of all was my Liettes. And that was a lady by the name of Deirdre. She did all the voices. Great female singer. I mean, she could just break glass. And she did all those harmonies. Mm-hmm. So I kind of smiled and said, it's Deirdre and the Liettes. We always used to kid about, well, the Liettes are in your purse right now. We don't want them to get into mischief, until it's time to sing. We had a lot of fun with that. But, oh man, she did such a great job. I think she really made that album work.
Well,
and the song "Sanctuary" was a prayer that was written by a dear blind friend of mine. And when I heard it, he wanted to know what I thought of it. And when I heard it, I heard a song. And I said, Richard, you know, that could be a really great song. He goes, well, if you want to use it, you can. So I did. And I don't know, the good Lord just let me, you know, into the melody that I use. And I thought it turned out really beautiful.
The whole album,
you know,
is really good. It's
like I want people to know who I am. You know, that's the thing. I'm not trying to point fingers at somebody and say, you know, you better go to church or you're not gonna, you know, you're gonna end up in hell. No, none of that at all. It's just, I think it's important for people, when you're someone like myself who's been around so long, that people find out what you know, what's down deep inside of you. You know, I've put out some pretty good albums, and I've written some good songs, but this one, this is the one for me.
Well, Brian, it's a different direction, but it's still blues, and it's still really good. And Brian, it's like we've been talking for about a half an hour now, so I think I'm going to let the people hear some of this CD, because I've heard it, but I haven't had a chance to play it on the radio because just didn't have a chance to until tonight. So I'm going to let the people have a dose of it right now.
Terrific.
And we'll be playing it more in the future as well. And I appreciate, you know, you and, you know, your people for getting it to me so I can play it. And I hope to see you. I'm going to be down in New Orleans for 10 days next year for Jazz Fest. So I hope you're playing sometime.
You never know, we might run into each other.
I'm going to call you up if I'm in town. Okay.
And like we were talking the other night about maybe trying to get me to Albuquerque, you know, get a couple guys to play with me, and you know, I could send them some of my music, and that's what I've been doing on some of these little road things that I've been doing. I've been taking my band in some of them, but some of them I just go, me and my drummer, we go, and you know, we pick up a couple other guys, and
we'd love to have you in town, man. We'd love to have you in town. And if we can make it happen, we're going to do it.
Yeah, maybe I'd run into Sally. That would be fun.
Yeah, she could do the keyboards for you, you know, right there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, Brian, thanks again for taking the time out tonight for talking to us and the audience out there. I really appreciate it. I know that, you know, it takes a lot out of you, and I appreciate it, but we'll have it for history, you know.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I love to talk about the music, you know. It's like people want to know who you are. They want to know why you do what you do. You know, it's just, you know, young white kid just loving black music and just not. Oh, I used to get the thing, you know, like, wow, man, how can you play this stuff? You're not black, and it's like, that is not what it's about. It's about the feeling. It isn't just, okay, so maybe it's a black art form, but that doesn't mean that other people can't become involved in it. And I mean, you know, to be able to say that I always kidded with him. I'd call him Riley, you know, B.B. King. Riley's his name, Riley B. King. And I always call him Riley, you know, and I mean, and buddy guy, I mean, we're terrific friends, and Albert King was a friend of mine, and Freddy King was a friend of mine. They all respected me for what I did. Muddy Waters told me one time, I had opened the show for him in Milwaukee at Summerfest, and you know, him and his wife were in the green room after their show, and I just wanted to go in and say, hey, that it was a great show and everything. And they're sitting there drinking some champagne, and I said, you know, Marty, it's such an honor to be in the presence of a living legend. And he set his champagne down. He come over to me and he gives me this big hug. And he says, Brian, my friend, one day you will be a living legend.
Well,
Man, I went home and I cried. You know what I mean? It's like, wow.
You can't get a better endorsement than that, you know, I'll tell you.
I mean, this black man didn't have to give me the time of day, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about, see, that's I guess that's where I can say that I have an advantage being blind, because I see beauty. I see people's souls, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Color doesn't matter to me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I had to make this album, to thank the good Lord for giving me the realization of just understanding. I mean, you know, if you have a choice of insight or eyesight, you're going to take the insight every time.
Wow, that's deep, man. Listen, Brian, we got to go because I got to play some of this music now. So thanks again for calling, man. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you on down the line, okay?
Yes, we will, my friend.
Thanks for calling, bro.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.
God bless you. Bye.
All right, Bryan Lee. He's a trip, I'll tell you. If you ever get a chance to see him live, certainly do it, because he is just a monster. And that's kind of why I'd like to have him on tonight, because he is a monster. So let's hear something. Oh, I got to do a brief announcement, and then let's see. We're going to play something from Bryan Lee's album, and the first song we're going to hear is called Jesus Gave Me the Blues.
Is it time to clear out that old car or truck? If so, do you want the expense of fixing it up to sell or trade? Or do you really have time for all those non-buyers to come by for a